Hey there, I'm Mike Murphy with IBM Research, and I'm here with Kush Varshney, IBM Fellow, and we're going to talk about why AI models need to be safe. So, Kush, why do AI models need to be safe?
Yeah, I mean, they're used in every walk of life. I mean, even if you're walking around and you're not trying to run into AI, you are running into it, right? So these LLMs, they're affecting every part of every sort of thing. And we don't want humanity to be in such a situation that we're being harmed, that especially marginalized groups and individuals, vulnerable people are being harmed. So all of that is really, I mean, reduction of harm is what we mean by safety.
I mean, it makes sense, but how do we actually go about doing that? How do we not recreate the biases that have been so intrinsic in so many other aspects of life?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is just recognizing that what is a harm, what isn't a harm. And we've actually created this really awesome risk atlas. So it's came out of research along with the ethics board of IBM. And now it's part of our product, Governance. It drives everything. So it catalogs a huge number of risks. A lot of just consideration of what is important, what is not, and now what we're moving to is how to take that and apply it to different applications, different use cases, so that you can say that, for this type of use, this is actually the most important risk. These are the most important set of risks, and so forth. And then once you've identified them, then you can actually start working on them. So yeah, I mean, there's the mapping part, then there's the measuring part, and then there's the managing. So measuring is the next step. So maybe I can talk about that in a bit. But yeah,
So, when you say mapping and trying to figure out what counts as a harm, is
yeah,
there, I would assume, especially if the ethics board is
hmm
involved, there are
yeah,
shades of gray here or things
yeah.
that maybe some people don't see as necessarily being a harm,
hmm
or maybe culturally is more of a harm in one country than another. How do you deal
Yeah.
with things like that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, everything is contextual. There's no black and white in this, and that's why for thousands of years people have been studying morality, right? The study of right and wrong and how to think about it. So we shouldn't just bake things in completely that this is what is considered and what's not, and that's kind of like too oppressive in a sense, right? I mean, why should IBM be the one that decides for the whole world that what's right and what's wrong, right? So yeah, we're trying to kind of have a lot of customization in there, the ability to fine tune these things, prompt them, kind of get them into like sort of ways that is very contextual. It's not like a one size fits all sort of thing.
So, is there a sort of structure where you could be like, well, this is what we think is a good idea, but we're not
hmm
ascribing that
hmm
this is how you should guardrail your model?
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. So we've created this Granite Guardian model. It's pretty nice, and it has some baked-in sort of harm dimensions, risk dimensions, and stuff. But then if you can prompt it, you can make it so that it accepts other kinds of risk definitions that go beyond what's baked in. And we have this whole eval assist framework that helps people define those risk dimensions for what they need.
Does that include things that we might consider like a risk that might everyone probably, probably shouldn't kill anyone, generally not a good idea,
Yeah.
but can you also make that to be things like, I don't want my model to say X as an output because that's what my competitor says?
Yeah, that's exactly right. There's great examples that we've heard about from customers. There's a financial institution that yeah, didn't want their LLM to talk about their competitors' products and that sort of thing. There's specific regulations in specific places, so you need to satisfy those. Even like confusion of different words and concepts. I mean, there can be like a lot of nuance to it. So yeah, all of that should count. All of that is important.
It seems like you can get into a dilemma or some kind of thing where it's like a utilitarian approach where it's like, well, I need a structure that will safeguard the most people or harm the fewest people. But then presumably you could also have models that are used by a small subset that are going to have a completely different set of standards.
Yeah.
And all of that needs to be considered.
Yeah, and that's exactly the right way to think about it. So in moral philosophy, there are a few different sort of starting points. One is utilitarianism, as you said, another is deontology, another is virtue ethics. And in my opinion, that's not the question to be asking, actually. Which one of those do you want to go with? It's really what's the right scope of that model. How is it being used, by whom, for what use, in what context, all of that. So if you can get the right scope down, then you can align these models to behave appropriately within that scope. And that scope could be the whole world, but it usually isn't. It could be a company, some sort of country, a smaller group. I mean, even to an individual, like you might want to align things for just yourself. And then there's also a time question. Should it be aligned for the whole, like all time, or maybe there's specific episodes in which you just want this alignment to last for that episode. And even like, is it about knowledge? Is it about behaviors? Is it about skills? Is it about values? I mean, what kind of thing are you trying to align a model for?
I feel like the conversation with LLMs has and making them safe has been around this concept of aligning.
Yeah.
It gives me, it reminds me of when I was a kid going to a bowling alley and they put the guardrails up.
Yeah.
So you couldn't go in the gutters. I still would lose, which was beside the point.
Yeah.
But I feel like now I'm hearing more about steerability.
Yeah.
Can you explain the difference there between the two?
Yeah. So in my mind, alignment is the goal. So what are you trying to get the model or the AI system to do? And steering is how you get there. So just like with a car, right? I mean, you have a goal where you're trying to get to, and then you have to kind of turn the wheel a little bit in order to get there. So the LLMs, when they come out of pre-training, they aren't particularly meant to be something other than just a basic starting point. And then all the steps that you do after the pre-training come under the umbrella of alignment. And it's because you're trying to first get them to understand instructions and then maybe have some moral character to them, have some particular knowledge that's relevant for your industry, for your use cases, and so forth. So all of that is achieved through steering. So you can steer in different ways. It can be through fine tuning, but it can also be through prompts. It can be on the decoding side of how these models produce their responses and so forth.
What are the areas of research that we're focusing on when it comes to steerability?
All of them. So that's a good thing about being at IBM Research. We have a very big team of really smart people, and everyone has their little interests of how to make AI better, right? And better for the world, better for our clients, right? And so we have people looking at how you can improve prompt steerability. We have people looking at activation steering. So that's kind of when you have your input going into the neural network, and then some output coming out. So the whole process of that is called, when you look at the numbers inside, those are the activation patterns. And you can actually change those a little bit here and there to achieve a particular behavior. When you have the output, right before the output happens, right before the response happens, there's a bunch of probabilities. And the AI system needs to pick which token, which word is going to be part of the response. And it's not always the one with the highest probability. Sometimes there's some other things you can do, and that's decoding. And so you can steer by decoding. And then the most obvious, the primary sort of version of where people think about changing the behaviors through fine-tuning. That can be kind of full fine-tuning of all the parameters in the model. It can be parameter efficient fine-tuning. So you sometimes hear about low rank adapters, LoRa, and activated LoRa, something we came up with in IBM Research. All of those are ways of changing the model behavior.
And maybe this is imposing morals on a moral system that we're trying to give something, approaching morals to. But if you consider an AI model to be an inscrutable black box that is making potentially morally charged decisions based on how it was trained, is the thing itself acting with some structure of morality, or is it just because we don't know exactly what's happening during that process, or is it just the result of whatever it was, whatever it was trained, and the types of research that you're talking about here? Can you say that the thing is making a moral judgment, or is it really just a result of instructions?
Yeah, I mean, I always caution against anthropomorphizing these LLMs too much, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the thing isn't choosing to do anything, but the developers either implicitly or explicitly somehow are. It could be through the curation of the data sets that were part of the pre-training, or any of these steering methods that are being applied later for alignment. So there is some intent by some entity, but how to understand it is a really good question, right? So we released this in context explainability 360 toolkit recently, and in the open source, and that provides a way to actually mathematically figure out what, if you see a response, the tokens in the response, why did they come as they came? So was it some particular word or phrase or longer sort of span in a retrieved document or in a prompt or something like that led to the output? And that sort of understanding, when it's done mathematically rather than through some weird prompting sort of approach, is definitely the truth. I mean, there's no doubting calculus, right? So that really is what happened, and that does help us. I mean, get some level of understanding, and you can do the similar things for understanding activations. So that's kind of known as mechanistic interpretability and some other things. But I really do believe that some level of understanding is useful, but then there's some behavioral sort of things too. Like when we talk about psychology of people, right? I mean, I don't know what's going on inside the neurons in your head, but I still have a sense of your psychology of it. So there's other types of understanding that we can look at too.
I see. That's interesting. So of those steering methods you were discussing, are there any that are more effective than the others, or any that have shown to be more capable in certain situations versus others?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the other toolkit that we're releasing next week is the AI steerability 360 toolkit. Again, open source, anyone can contribute, and it has a dozen different methods in there, some from each of those different points of the process that I talked about, the prompt side, the activation side, the fine-tuning or parameter side, or the decoding side. And the nice thing about the toolkit is that you can ask that question. You can do an apples to apples comparison, because all other ways that are out there right now don't permit that question to be asked, really, because sometimes, many of us are experienced with prompting, right? I mean, you can say, I want the model to act in this way. But then how do you convert that into the same exact behavior, but done through decoding or done through fine-tuning or otherwise? So that's actually what we can start asking. And then we have this apples to apples comparison, and we can say, oh, on this dimension, whether it's the adherence to the particular behavior, how is that particular method doing or not doing? And then can ask other questions: what's more costly, less costly, and a lot of other questions. And coming back to, the first thing that you asked, right? So are any of them better or worse? Sure, some are worse, but in many different situations, there's some that are equally good. And so this has been always the case with machine learning. Even traditional machine learning back in the day, you couldn't ever say, this is the one best machine learning method, because depending on the data characteristics or based on some other sort of factors, this would work well, this other thing would work well, this other thing would work well in different circumstances, and that's still true today.
Well, you bring up a good point as well, which is that beyond saying one is intrinsically better than another, the cost side of things can be so important, especially in an enterprise setting.
Yeah.
Where it's is this good enough for the price is a huge question.
Yeah.
If you're in that setting versus maybe if you and I were for some reason spending our own time on Olama setting up our own model for our own use case, not saying I've done that. you could create your own alignment and go, cost be damned. I'm going to spend all of my compute and my computer's going to catch on fire, but it'll be the most safe model known to man. So that would be a very different use case.
Yeah, exactly. And as we're working with enterprises, as we're working like anything in the real world, whether it's enterprises in the US or even like very small sort of application domains in developing world countries or kind of anything, right? Cost is a big factor. And this something that we're pushing at IBM Research is called generative computing. I know we've put out a bunch of content on that, and that really, I mean, helps with all of this, right? So whenever I'm talking about steering, you can think of that as a function that's being called to kind of change the behavior of a model. And a function can be something that you do with generative AI, but it can also be just another kind of capability that you kind of do through other types of programming, right? And so when you call a function, when it's needed to have that be done through AI, great. So then you can do any of these steering methods behind the scenes, or it could be accomplished through other sort of programming methods too. So that's something we're calling intrinsic functions. So intrinsics of a generative computing program means changing the behavior, taking on some action. And if it happens to be best done through AI, through LLMs, through adapters, through ALORAs, whatever, great. And if it happens to be done best through something else, also great, because then you can keep the cost down. Only call the LLM when it's really needed and when it's really appropriate.
Is that like an agentic process that is routing that decision in real time?
It could be. I mean, I think we're going to get there eventually. I don't think we're at that point yet, but there's a lot of great research coming out that could get us there.
I see. So you mentioned generative computing. I know what computing is.
Yeah.
What is generative computing?
So what is computing? If you know what it is, tell me.
I mean, let me ask Siri. No.
Yeah, no, computing, I mean, very basic sort of thing. It's taking numbers and accomplishing something with them. We represent language with numbers, with zeros and ones, and then we're able to produce something out of it. But most of the computing we talk about is kind of like arithmetic in some sense. There's some computation that you're really trying to do. There's some control flow that you can encode through if statements, through like all sorts of stuff, right? But what generative AI allows us to do is to kind of soften these sort of things. So generative computing is good at, let's say, summarizing a paragraph, or it's good at looking at these behaviors that we've been talking about and saying, like, does something adhere to a given behavior or not? But generative computing isn't the best for everything, right? So if you want to like have a do while loop or some construction like that, you don't want to use generative computing to do that, but just to measure or like know whether the while condition was met. Okay. Yeah. So what generative computing really is taking like programming overall, using the AI, the generative AI, only in the places where it's good to be used, and everything else is done through normal programming. And then when the generative AI is used, that itself has robustness issues. It can sometimes hallucinate. It can sometimes be inconsistent. So we put some apparatus around those generative AI calls to make it more reliable as well. So that's the general idea. So do computing as it's supposed to be done, use the generative AI where it's good, and make it more reliable in those places.
I see. So it's about creating a repeatable structure as you would in any other software paradigm.
Yeah, exactly.
I see. Also, when I think of what is computing, I like to think of the fact that we struck sand with lightning and tricked it to do math.
Yeah. That's an awesome way to think of it. And even more interestingly, like I'm an electrical engineer by training, and the whole idea of electrical engineering is how do you get circuits, how do you get lenses, how do you get, all these sort of things that have nothing to do with computing to do computing.
It's true. Yeah, I love it. So were there any surprises along the way when you were working on the in-context toolkit or the steerability work that you're working on right now? Is there anything you were surprised about that popped up?
Yeah, I mean, I think actually the most surprising is that you can kind of make a decision on what to include and what not to include, and then you wait a week, even wait an hour, and then there's all these new methods that have come out. So even scoping the project in terms of what to include and what not to include, I think has been an interesting exercise. And we're trying to kind of take the geek way into account, kind of do things with speed and the scientific method, be open and have ownership and all of these sort of things. And uh, having a moving target as you're trying to create something is I mean, it's a surprise. It's something we've always kind of had a sense about, but just the pace of innovation is so fast right now that keeping up with all of that is the big challenge.
You need steerability for your steerability.
Exactly.
Something out there telling you what's new.
Yeah, and that's what we have. I mean, all the researchers around are our steering wheel. So yeah.
I wonder with like the pace of innovation being so fast in this space, when you're trying to create structures that don't replicate biases that have existed throughout humanity, it's got to be even more difficult when you're working at what is comparably a breakneck speed compared to pretty much every generation of technology beforehand.
Yeah. It certainly is a challenge, but I think slowing down, putting friction into this pace of innovation while maintaining the right sort of speed is the right way to go. So I know in the past we've talked about governance in general. So we kind of think of that as the controller, making sure that steam boiler doesn't explode, right? So do the things that you need to do, but don't go overboard, and just keep things under control. And this is what our clients, what our customers are looking for. They want to be innovating at a rapid pace, but not getting into a situation where they're kind of going against regulations, going against what their own customers want, risking their reputations just for the sake of innovation. So innovation is great while being in control of how that innovation happens.
I've got to assume as well for let's say a brand, something that's well known as having a voice in a certain way.
Yeah.
You could use these tools presumably to guide your model, let's say, to have an output that always sounds a certain way.
Yeah.
Let's say you're a company that has a clown for a mascot. They're going to be jaunty or something.
Yeah.
Or, you know what I mean? Like, is that another corporate use case that maybe is beyond just, safety?
Yeah, I'd like to think well beyond safety, because safety kind of is limiting. And so all of these things that we're talking about, whether it's risks or steerability or any of these sort of things, they map very well to just desired behaviors. And so, one of our customers, before the LLM age, they were working with IBM and IBM Research in general, and they spent a whole day to decide whether their chatbot should use the term "that's great" or not. Right, and so because of that whole style question, right, and now where we're headed is even beyond style, I think, and it's about agency. So agency as a concept, it's like how much control do you have over what goes on, right? And a lot of the LLMs, a lot of the chatbots that are out there right now are very eager sort of assistants, right? Maybe too eager for most use cases. So when you're thinking about critique, when you're thinking about editing, when you're thinking about tutoring, when you're thinking about a lot of different things, the human involved in this AI-human collaboration shouldn't get their agency taken away from them. And I kind of analogize this to helicopter parents. So as a parent, my kids, right, I don't want to be doing everything for them because it takes away their agency, and they're not going to grow, they're not going to learn, they're not going to have self-worth if they don't have a lot of their own agency, right? And that's the struggle with these AI assistants right now is even beyond style, how do we get them to act in the appropriate manner for the type of relationship that we're looking for them to have?
And I've got to believe that certain companies or model building organizations will have different approaches to that. But I guess we have a pretty, where does the the ethics board come into that? Like, is there a way that we would approach that someone else might be taking a different stance?
Yeah, and this always comes back to how we started the conversation. So we have to customize to the precise sort of use case, the precise context that we're talking about. So if we're kind of looking at an application where it's a co-creative sort of application where the human and the AI are brainstorming together, then yeah, I mean, you need to balance that agency among, all of the parties, the AI and the humans involved. So there's a lot of customers that are in the brainstorming business, right? So that's what they would want. But then let's say it's something like filling out your taxes for you. I would be more than happy to give up all my agency, right? There, it's a question of like just defining the task. What is the activity? What are you doing? And like how much agency does a human really want? So there's a lot of kind of trade-offs and a whole spectrum of possible activities.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I wouldn't want a tax bot to come back and go, well, what do you think?
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like we hinted at it with generative computing, but what's next for your research? Where's the horizon?
Yeah, I think, agents are a game changer. So when there's autonomous actions taken, that's clearly like a whole new attack surface, a whole new set of risk dimensions. So that's part of it. But the generative computing gives us a way to kind of set things up in such a way that you can have all these controls at the appropriate place with the right cost profile, the right context involved. So whether we're talking about steerability or explainability or other types of risk mitigations or other types of behaviors that we want, all of that can be done through intrinsic functions, through other parts of generative computing. So our mission going forward is to intersect all of this work on human-centeredness and trustworthiness of AI with kind of this generative computing paradigm to really bring it forward and kind of hang all of these interesting capabilities that humanity needs with a way to accomplish it in a reasonable, cost-effective, robust sort of way.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to that.
Yeah, so do I.
Well, thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. Thanks for the awesome conversation.
Thanks. Thanks, everyone, for watching. And if you want to learn more, please subscribe. Have a good one.